Happy weekend, everybody. It is Friday, 15-minute finances on Saturday. Why not? The weekend's a great time to get answers to some of your basic finance questions. And we've got three really good ones that came up today. So here's what we're going to cover in today's Friday Finance 15 on Saturday. One, should I hire a contractor or an employee for my first hire? Two, how do I figure out what credit card to get? And three, what the heck is working capital? Those are the three that came through this week that I wanted to make sure I touched on. So welcome and buckle in for 15 minutes. Let's start with the first one. First one, should I hire a contractor or an employee? So let me preface this by saying this is not legal advice. This is not tax accounting advice, okay? This is just business thoughts for us as business leaders. So I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each of these in like a 5-minute little spiel here. So what is a contractor really? Okay, what is the difference between a contractor and an employee? The basic difference, to simplify it, is that if you hire a contractor, they're completely responsible for reporting their own income taxes and paying it on everything that they make. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but bottom line is, if you pay them $1,000, you pay them $1,000, and it's totally their responsibility to pay taxes on that. If you hire somebody as an employee, then you're responsible for, if you pay them $1,000, both withholding a portion of that pay. That's what withholding tax means. So instead of paying them $1,000, you actually only give them, let's say, $800, and you keep 200 of it and send it in to the various governments they have to pay income tax to. So the federal government and the state government, maybe even the local government. So if you hire them as an employee, you have to only pay them what's left after their taxes, and then you take that money that you withheld from their paycheck and send it into the various entities that need to collect that person's income tax. Okay? And there are ways to do that very easily. There are payroll systems that basically do that work for you. But the bottom line is they get a little less money because that's my cat you're hearing from. I know it sounds like a dead animal or a dead human or a human in pain up there, but it's actually just the cat. So I'm going to keep going. So if it's a contractor, you just give them the whole amount. They figure out what they're going to do about taxes. If it's an employee, you give them a little bit less, and then you make sure that their tax money gets sent to the government. So that's sort of the accounting difference, the tax difference. There's another really important piece of this that's a little more complicated, but I'm going to try and make it simple. If you pay a contractor, you give them the $1,000 and you're done. If you pay an employee $1,000, we withhold, just like I said, but then you also have to pay what's called an employer tax on top of that. So you, because you're employing this person, you're going to pay another 7.5% out of your own company's pocket to the government. So whereas with a contractor, you pay them $1,000, it costs you $1,000. With an employee, you pay them, if they're a $1,000 employee, you pay them $800. You give the government $200 for their income taxes, and then you pay what's called an employer tax of what would be, in this case, $75. Yeah, I did that right. $75 to the government for employer tax. So it actually costs you $1,075 instead of just $1,000. Okay, cutting through the chase and making that very short. If you pay a contractor, you're done with whatever you pay the contractor. If you pay an employee, you pay a little bit more as an employer for that and do a little bit more work around it. So what's the difference other than that? The difference other than that is if you have an employee, you have a lot more obligations to an employee, especially as you get bigger. Not so much when you only have one or two employees, but as you grow, companies have a lot more responsibility to employees than they do to contractors. The other thing that's a little tricky about this when you're making this decision is that it's not always as easy as, well, in fact, it's never as easy as, oh, what's the way that I want to do this? Just for tax purposes. You need to actually decide which they should be as a result of the state that you're in. And this really does vary state by state. But Overall, the sort of broad overarching rule around this is if it's somebody whose time you control, who has to do things exactly the way you tell them to do it, when you tell them to do it, if you're the only person they're working for, and a few other things, but those are the big ones. If you really control them, and if they're the only person working for you, if you're the only person they're working for, most states are going to really push you to say that should be an employee. If not, if they control their time, they can do the work whenever they want. They can kind of do the work however they want. They can have other clients, and they do have other clients. That's a big helpful thing. Then you can pay them as a contractor. And then you also have one other responsibility if you pay them as a contractor. And that is this dreaded thing once a year where you really have to file with the IRS a document that's called a 1099. So here's the trick on that. Whenever you hire somebody as a contractor and before you make your first payment to them, you want to get a document from them called a W-9. That tells you everything you need to know to make that obligation to file that annual report with the government really easy, like it's a no-brainer. So, going to recap here, rules of thumb. Number one, it's a little more expensive to the company to hire an employer or an employee, and you have a few more responsibilities related to somebody if you hire them as an employee. It's a little easier to hire a contractor, but you do have to send out a report to the IRS on how much you pay them each year. There's some exceptions to that I'll address in another Friday 15. But you don't have to pay any more than you promise to pay them. If you promise $1,000, you only pay them $1,000, and everything else is their problem. But overall, the real decision is based on whether they are really somebody that you control as you would control an employee's work, or somebody who works very independently and can, kind of choose when they work, how they do it, and they might have other clients. One last thing on this topic. If you do get a contractor, if you do sign them on as a contractor, get a signed independent contractor agreement. You can find templates for these all over the internet for free, but make sure you get them to sign that. The reason I'm saying that is if at any point in time, a state comes to you and challenges you and says, hey, they should have been an employee, not a contractor, you can at least show this contract. You can talk about which talks about how they work independently and there's no employee arrangement. And again, this isn't legal advice because there's all sorts of other intricate things in there. But basically, as a starting out business, if you want to do it right, these are the things to do to get yourself very, very close to perfect on how and whether to hire a contractor or an employee. All right, that's question number one. What is question number two? Question number two is, how do I find out what kind of credit card I should get? So this one, actually, I got turned on to by my daughter, and I'm going to share a screen here. And I hope when I share the screen that I can actually go over here and we'll both be on this little screen here, and I can. Okay, write this down. Nerd Wallet. NERDWALLET. I've looked at all sorts of services like this, and this one really is the most user-friendly and the most helpful in finding out what credit card you should and can get at any point in time. So here's the place I go. This is the main page for NerdWallet. You can sign in or sign up, and it's free, so it doesn't cost you anything. But what you can do on this main page is go right here to credit cards. And when you go right here to credit cards, you can look at a bunch of different things. But the one I like is this guy right here that says, find the best cards for you. There's also a pre-qualify so that you can kind of know whether you're going to get one or not, but it's really helpful. But find the best cards for you is where you go in and you input some information about yourself, your credit rating. NerdWallet can help you find your credit rating if you want to, but it'll take a bunch of information about you, and then it will give you a list of the credit cards that you're most likely to qualify for. So this is a big deal. This is a great site. It does a lot more than just that. You can get your credit score. You can look at banking, investing, mortgages. This is a bunch of stuff about finance, and it's very user-friendly. And I got introduced to it by a college kid, basically, who needed to know What kind of credit card should I get? And she pointed this site out to me. And like I said, I've been to a lot of sites, but this one is really the most user friendly. So you can also look at the top picks in NerdWallet based on what are the best credit cards that are happening. You can click on this here, and then you can find out what kind of thing. Do I want the best offers in September? Do I want to do balance transfers? Do I want travel points, low interest, cash back? You can kind of pick whichever one you want, including business. And it'll say, hey, here are the best ones right now. And then you can compare them. So you can look at American Express Blue, and then you can look at Chase Inc. And then you can hit if I only have average credit, maybe I want to look at Capital One as well. And then you just hit compare here somewhere. Add to compare. And let me go back to the top. Somewhere I'm able to just compare them. I believe maybe I don't know where, but there's a button in here that after you've clicked on a bunch of them to compare, you can actually compare them. So it's a great site. You can really see everything you want to see. And then somewhere in here, start comparing cards, blah, blah, blah. There you go. You hit this button down here in the bottom. And then I've picked these 4 cards to look at, and I can see all of the different things lined up and telling me the difference between each one. So awesome, awesome tool. That is my recommendation. If you're ready to get a credit card, where to go look to find a credit card. All right, enough of that. What is the third question? The third question is, what is working capital? Great, great question. So this is what this question basically means. The same question to be asked would be, what is cash that I can use? That really is the definition of working capital, cash that I can use in my business. So all it means is there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can increase cash. What you're really saying is those are all the different ways that I can increase working capital. So why is it important, and why does it have a different term? Well, it has a different term because it basically means that this is capital or assets, an asset that I can use in my business right now to work in my business. So it's working capital. But basically it just is cash. That's really your biggest piece of working capital. Here's why it's a little bit broader than that. It's a little bit broader than that because it also includes your accounts receivable that you can collect now. And it also, you can get more cash by paying your bills only when they're due, right? So collecting your accounts receivable faster. What is accounts receivable? It's the money that your customers owe you. So a lot of us have courses or coaching where we collect that amount in the beginning of the month. So we're not going to have a huge opportunity there to collect cash faster. But let me give you an example. Say that you have $1,000 in your bank and you need $2,000 to do something. And you look and you've got some people on a payment plan. And say you have 3 people on a payment plan and they're going to pay you each $5,000 over the next 12 months. If you want to accelerate or increase your working capital, what you can do is go out to them and say, hey, if you want to pay me early, I'll let you pay me a little bit less right now. So you can increase how much cash you have on hand. Okay. So that's really that. The terms are interchangeable. Not really. If you talk to an accountant, they'll tell you I'm lying to you. But from a business person standpoint, they really are interchangeable. It's how much capital you have available to you, AKA how much cash you have available to you to spend in your business. So one of the things you can do, here's the tip of the week, accelerate a payment plan. Call somebody and say, hey, I know you owe me $5,000 over the next 12 months. If you really need cash, what you can say is, hey, why don't you just pay me $3,000 today and we'll call it even. All of a sudden, you have $3,000 in your bank and a little more working capital, a little more cash that you can use. Those are your 3 the 3 tips for today. Whether you should hire somebody as a contractor or an employee, biggest thing there, or the biggest difference between the two, I won't rehash all the do's and don'ts, but the biggest difference between the two, when you pay a contractor, you pay them whatever you agree to pay them. When you pay an employee, you pay them a little less than what you agreed to pay them and send the difference to the government. And then you also have an additional tax that you have to pay because they're an employee. Number 2, was, where do I find out about the best credit card? What's the best credit card for me? Check out NerdWallet, an amazing website with a lot of functionality. And no, I'm not an affiliate. I'm not even dropping a link here so that you even worry that I'm affiliate. Just go look it up on the internet. And third is, what is working capital? And it's basically the cash that's available to you to use in your business. And remember, it doesn't always mean only the cash that's sitting in your bank account. There's ways to get more cash into that bank account by accelerating some payments. In other words, giving somebody a deal to pay you early, or don't pay any bills until they're actually due. If that credit card bill or that invoice from one of your contractors isn't due until the 30th of September, don't pay it until the 30th of September, because then you get to keep that cash a little longer. And as we all know, on the Friday Finance 15s, even when we do them on Saturday, cash is king. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Take care.